Every morning starts with a choice. Don't settle for just coffee. Rise up with strong coffee. Meet the world's strongest cup of joe. Strong isn't just a drink, it's a movement. And strong stands for striving to reach our natural greatness.
Born from one simple need to be better. They rebuilt coffee from the ground up, infusing organic coffee with collagen, protein, nootropics, and functional ingredients that fuel your body and sharpen your mind. There's no crash, no compromises, just clean energy, focus, and flavor that fires you up.
Whether you're chasing kids, chasing goals, or chasing greatness, don't just wake up, rise up. Strong coffee, the world's strongest cup of joe, for a world ready to be better.
Use code INFOGO at checkout to save 15%.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm William.
And I'm Kat.
And that makes this info on the go.
Answering questions you may not want to know.
This is probably one of those ones you probably don't want to know. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, in the quiet Appalachian town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. Snow dusted the rooftops, and the streets were still. Inside the Sodder family home, the warmth of the holiday glowed, lights twinkled, laughter echoed, and 10 children nestled into their beds, the youngest just 3 years old. How did that do on setting that Christmas scene up?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Um,
Well, it's about to turn dark, but
yeah. Yeah. George and Jennie Sodder, Italian immigrants who had built a life from the ground up, were proud of their bustling household.
so while George was running a successful trucking business, Jenny was the homemaker there, right? She was
Hmm.
doing everything that George wasn't.
Right. The power of teamwork.
Yeah. I mean, the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning.
Absolutely. Their children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny Jr., Betty, and five others, were the center of their world. So she had a lot to contend with at home.
Yeah, she was doing a lot. Um, but by dawn, their world would be reduced to ashes.
At around 1 a.m., flames erupted from the Sodder home.
Yeah, within minutes, the house was engulfed. George and Jenny escaped with four of their children, but five never emerged.
Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny Jr., and Betty were gone.
And the fire department arrived, well, hours later. The blaze had already consumed the house.
And when the embers cooled, there was something even more chilling than the fire itself. No trace of the five missing children. No bodies, no bones, no nothing.
Wow. You know, so authorities, well, they declared the missing children dead. And the Soders, well, they believe they were taken. And this is the story of a family who refused to accept the official explanation.
A story of strange clues, suspicious silence, and a decades long search for truth.
So, really, what happened to the Sodder children that Christmas Eve?
Were they victims of the fire, or did they vanish into something far more sinister?
I have a question for you. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
This is kind of interesting, isn't it? Well, wait till we get into the details of it because it's mind-boggling. I mean, for sure, it's mind-boggling. The Sodder home was filled with warmth that Christmas Eve.
Right. The children had opened new gifts early, laughter echoed through the rooms, and the older kids begged to stay up late.
Jenny agreed as long as they remembered to turn off the lights and, well, lock the doors before going to bed.
By 10 p.m., George and Jenny retired to their upstairs bedroom, taking baby Sylvia with them.
So the older children, Maurice, who was 14, Martha, who was 12, Louis, 9, Jenny Jr., 8 years old, and Betty, 5, they remained downstairs, still buzzing with holiday excitement. Well, it's Christmas Eve. I mean, what kid wants to go to bed? They're so excited, right?
For sure. For sure. I remember trying to fight that sleep.
Yeah, me and you both.
So at around 12:30 in the morning, the phone rang. Jenny answered, and a woman's voice asked for someone Jenny didn't even know.
And then in the background, there was laughter. Jenny told her she had the wrong number, and well, that caller hung up.
She noticed the lights were still on and the curtains open, which was odd since the children were supposed to have gone to sleep.
Yeah, so she got up, she turned off the lights, closed the curtains, and returned to bed, because she didn't really know. Like at this point, you're not expecting anything, right?
Mm-mm.
Other than your kids forgot to do all this.
Right. I don't know. I would make sure they all made it to their own bed too. So,
Well, I mean, at 10 children, like, I don't know. I think by this time she's probably tired.
I mean, for sure, but you want to make sure they're at least where there should be.
Mm, okay, I can go with that.
I would, especially if you didn't, physically see them go into their bedrooms.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's just me though. Kids are kids.
always.
So, anyway, then just after 1 a.m., Jenny was jolted awake by the smell of smoke.
Yeah, so flames were creeping up the walls of the house. George and Jenny sprang into action.
So, then, just after 1 a.m., Jenny was jolted awake by the smell of smoke, and flames were creeping up the walls of the house. George and Jenny sprang into action.
Yeah, so they grabbed Sylvia and rushed out, calling for their children. Four of them, Marion, George Jr., John, and Sylvia, they made it out. But the five who had stayed up late, well, they were nowhere to be seen.
George tried to re enter the house, but the staircase was already engulfed. He smashed a window to reach the attic, slicing his arm open in the process. But there was no response, no sign of the other children. Outside, chaos turned into desperation. And George ran to grab the ladder he always kept propped against the house, but it was gone.
So he sprinted to his trucks, hoping to climb on the top of his truck to reach the attic windows. Neither truck would start. And though they had worked perfectly the day before, they wouldn't start during this time. That's kind of eerie there, all on its own.
Yeah, that's wild. Uh,
Yeah.
Jenny ran to a neighbor's house to call the fire department, and the operator didn't respond.
Another neighbor tried, still no answer. Eventually, someone reached the chief, F.J. Morris, but the volunteer fire crew didn't arrive till nearly 8 a.m., almost 7 hours after the fire had begun. Dang.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's a time frame there.
Wow. That is a big that whoop, that's crazy. And it just have to sit there and watch while your house burns down too.
Yeah, that's no fun. Have you ever had a house burn down?
Uh no.
When I was a kid, our house burnt down, and yeah, you're right. It's no fun to sit there and watch it.
Yeah, no. Casey had that happen to him too.
Yeah.
Ugh. But in any case, by then the Sodder home was a smoldering ruin, of course, because there's no way.
No.
But George and Jenny weren't convinced. They had searched the ashes themselves. There was no bones, no remains, nothing.
And so began a mystery that would haunt the Soder family and captivate the nation for generations. By the time the volunteer fire department had arrived, nearly 8 hours after the blaze began, the Sodder home, well, it's really reduced to a pile of rubble at this particular time, right?
Right. The fire chief, F.J. Morris, surveyed the scene and offered a simple explanation: an electrical fire, likely sparked by faulty wiring. But the five missing children, he said, had perished in the flames.
Yeah, but you know, George and Jenny, they really weren't convinced. They had watched the fire closely, and the flames had moved fast. True, but not fast enough to prevent escape. So, in other words, their children could have made it out, because it really just didn't like engulf it. Like they watched this thing happen.
Right. But where did they go? So I guess that is the whole question here.
Premise of this episode, yes.
Exactly. They had called out to their children, broken windows, and tried every route to reach them. And when the fire was finally extinguished, they searched the ruins themselves.
What they found or what they didn't find, it would haunt them. There was no bones, no skull fragments, no traces of the other five children who were supposedly consumed by the fire.
And Jenny, who had read extensively about house fires in her grief, knew that even in the most intense blazes, bones remain. She even conducted her own experiment burning animal bones in her stove, and they never fully disintegrated.
All right, I get that she's doing this research and stuff like that. But that's kind of weird there.
Yeah,
Just a little bit. But I mean, I get it. I mean, this is a mother torn, right?
yeah, absolutely. And just trying to figure out why there was nothing to
Yeah,
find.
I get that 100%. So why was there nothing left of Maurice, Martha, Lewis, Jenny Jr., and Betty? Well, authorities insisted the children had died. Death certificates were issued within weeks, right?
Yeah. And the case was closed, but the Sodders refused to accept it. They began asking questions. Why had the fire department taken so long to respond? Why had the ladder gone missing? Why had both trucks failed to start? And why, in a fire that burned for less than an hour, was there no physical evidence of five young bodies?
Yeah, I mean, so the official narrative was tidy, but the reality was anything but. George and Jenny believed something else had happened that night. George and Jenny believed something else happened that night, something far more disturbing than a tragic accident. And as they began to dig deeper, they would uncover a trail of strange clues, suspicious behavior, and chilling possibilities. I don't know about you, but yeah, I kind of see where they're going with this. Like, hey, look, there should be something of my kids here.
Right.
Why
I,
is
I,
there not anything?
right. There should be something, just bones, if anything, but there should be something left.
Yeah.
The fire may have destroyed their home, but it ignited a mystery that would burn for decades. And the fire may have been the spark, but what followed in the days and weeks after turned tragedy into mystery.
So the Sodder family began to notice details. Small at first, but increasingly disturbing. And, these details, they just really didn't add up. So let's start with the phone line. How about you take that?
Jenny had received a strange call just after midnight on Christmas Eve, and a woman asked for someone Jenny didn't know, then laughed before hanging up.
But when investigators checked the phone line, they discovered it hadn't failed due to the fire. Well, it had been cut deliberately from outside the house. Now, that's crazy all on its own, right?
That's weird.
That is strange.
But then there was the ladder. George always kept it propped against the side of the house. And that night, when he needed it most to reach the attic, it was gone.
Yeah, and then later that ladder was found tossed in a nearby ditch, far from where it should have been, far from where George had always placed it. Like,
Wow.
so, all right, so now we have two things that are just kind of weird here, right? Actually, three. You got the woman calling, you got the phone line that's been cut, and the ladder that's been moved.
And it cut from outside the house. And to add insult to injury, this is Christmas Eve and into Christmas morning. They had their house burned.
Yeah. And then
So,
what about those trucks? You want to do that?
hmm the trucks. George's two coal delivery truck. Yeah, George's two coal delivery trucks parked outside had worked perfectly fine the day before. But when he tried to start them to climb atop and reach the attic windows, neither engine would turn over.
Yeah, so was it sabotage? Was it coincidence? The Sodders didn't think it was any of that. In the weeks leading up to the fire, strange things had started happening there.
A man had appeared on their property asking about work. He wandered around the back of the house, pointing to the fuse box and muttering something about it being a fire hazard.
Yeah, George really found this to be odd, especially since the wiring had recently been inspected and deemed safe.
Another man, an insurance salesman, had visited George when George declined his offer. The man became very angry.
Yeah, he had warned George that this house would well, it would go up in smoke and that his children would be destroyed.
But,
Dang.
wow, it's so weird. But why, though? Was it because George was outspoken in his criticism of Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator?
So Fayetteville really had a tight-knit Italian immigrant community. And not everyone appreciated George's political views there. Then came the sightings. In the days after the fire, witnesses came forward claiming that they had seen the Sodder children alive. Wait a minute, what?
Wow. And one woman even said she saw them in a passing car the morning after the fire. Another had claimed she saw them at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston, accompanied by unknown adults. And a hotel worker in Charleston said she saw four children matching their description with two men and two women, but none of whom resembled the Sodders.
All right. This is just starting to get even weirder now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the Sodders, well, they followed every one of those leads. They hired private investigators. They wrote letters. They put up billboards on Route 16 with the children's photos and a $10,000 reward. They were convinced their children had not died in the fire. You know, they were really convinced that their children had, well, been taken.
But by whom and why? The clues were scattered, the motives unclear, but one thing was certain: the Sodders were not alone in their suspicions.
And I think before we get into some of all of that, I think we should take a little break.
Okie doke.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Looking for your favorite band, team, or TV show, maybe that movie? Since 1969, Old Glory has been the ultimate destination for officially licensed merchandise, with over 300,000 items in music, sports, movies, TVs, and popular culture. And you have Christmas coming up. Have that hard to find person that you're looking for? Check out Old Glory. At checkout, use our exclusive listener discount code and get 15% off any product. All you have to do is put InfoGo in at checkout. That's InfoGo at oldglory.com. You can find the link in the show notes.
Are you too hot at night? Well, say hello to the world's softest sheets. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheet set keeps you cool, dry, and comfy all night long. It's made from bamboo. They're moisture wicking, breathable, and get even softer with every wash. Did you even know that you can make sheets out of bamboo? I didn't. I thought that was awesome. And they have pajama sets. Pure cozy elegance, stylish, silky, praised on Good Morning America and in style, and backed by thousands of five-star reviews. You can't beat the 100-night sleep trial and free shipping on over $50 plus a 10-year warranty for sheets. 41% off any product with code INFOGO at CozyEarth.com. Make sure you find the link in the show notes.
So now that we're back, the case had already begun to attract, well, national attention. And the deeper they dug, well, the stranger things became. You know, Kat, I say let's explore how the Sodder family launched their own investigation and the chilling discoveries they made along the way. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Oh, dang, I wrote in the break.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, he had it almost right on the money.
Sorry. Okay, well, I guess I'll take all that out.
Doing great.
All
Doing
right.
great. It's funny. So the official story was simple. The kids had died in the fire, but Jenny and George refused to accept it. They had seen the flames, they had searched the ashes, and they knew what they hadn't found, and that was no evidence that their five children had perished in that fire.
So they did what grieving parents rarely have the strength to do. They launched their own investigation, and it began with questions, pointed ones. Why did the fire department take so long to respond?
Why had the phone line been cut?
Yeah, and why did the trucks fail to start?
And why, in a fire that burned for less than an hour, was there no trace of five young bodies?
But George and Jenny, they really did not stop asking questions. They hired private investigators. They contacted newspapers. They wrote letters to government officials, including J. Edgar Hoover, who, if you don't know, was the head of the FBI during this time.
Hoover declined to get involved, though, citing jurisdictional limits, but the case was gaining traction. And in 1950, 5 years after the fire, the Sodders erected a billboard along Route 16 just outside of Fayetteville.
Yeah, on it were the faces of Maurice, Martha, Lewis, Jenny Jr., and Betty, alongside a plea for information and a $10,000 reward.
The billboard became a landmark, a symbol of the family's relentless pursuit of truth, and it stayed up for nearly 4 decades.
Yeah, so the media took notice. National outlets picked up the story. The Sodders were interviewed, profiled, and questioned. Some saw them as, well, they saw them as desperate. Yeah, I mean, think about all these things that don't add up. I mean, I would probably be considered desperate too.
Right. Where did my kids go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, others saw them as brave, but no one really could deny the mystery at the heart of their search. Then in 1967, more than 20 years after the fire, a letter arrived at the Sodder home, and it was postmarked from Kentucky. And inside was a photograph of a young man in his 20s, and on the back, a cryptic message.
Yeah, the man in the photo bore a striking resemblance to Louis Sodder, who had vanished at age 9. The eyes, the jawline, even the expression was just uncanny. And George and Jenny, they were what you think they would be. They were stunned when they saw this, right?
That's insane. They hired another investigator at this point to travel to Kentucky and track down the sender. He took the case and vanished, never contacted the family again, and never returned.
Okay, there's a lot of things here that just are not adding up for the Sodder family, is there?
No.
So the Sodders, well, they added the photo to the billboard, another face, another clue, and it also added another unanswered question.
They never found definitive proof, but they never stopped searching. And George died in 1969, but Jenny kept the billboard up until her own death in 1989. And their surviving children carried the torch, especially Sylvia, the youngest, who was just 2 years old when the fire happened.
She remained convinced her siblings had survived and that someone somewhere knew the truth. There's a lot of oddities here that really just don't make any sense.
No. The Sodder family's investigation wasn't just about solving a mystery. It was about love, loss, and the refusal to let go. It was also about challenging authority and defying silence and demanding answers in the face of indifference.
Yeah, and it left behind one of the most enduring unsolved cases in American history. As the years passed and the official story remained unchanged, the Sauter family and the public began to explore, well, alternative explanations.
What really happened to the five missing children? And if they didn't die in the fire, then where did they go? I say let's examine the most enduring theories, shall we?
Okay, sure. Let's start with theory one, which is kidnapping by the Sicilian Mafia. As we mentioned before, George, he was outspoken, especially about politics. He had fled Mussolini's Italy and wasn't shy about criticizing the dictator, even when Fayetteville's tight-knit Italian immigrant community. Well, some believe this really may have made George and his family a target.
Another theory suggests that the children were kidnapped by agents of the Sicilian Mafia, either as retaliation for George's views or as leverage. And the threats from the insurance salesman who warned George his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed kind of lend weight to this idea.
Yeah, I kind of go back to this one. But why take the children and not harm George directly? And why leave no ransom demand, no communication, no trace? Why?
Right,
Well,
right,
I mean, I think if you really want to destroy a person, that would be one way to do it.
for sure. Another theory was accidental death and cover up. Another possibility is far more mundane and far more sinister. Yeah, some speculate that the children may have died in the fire, but the circumstances surrounding their deaths were so troubling that authorities covered it up.
Perhaps faulty wiring wasn't really the case here. Perhaps the fire was started by someone who didn't expect the children to be inside. And the delayed response from the fire department, the missing ladder, the disabled trucks, well, all of this could point to negligence or even a worst case scenario.
Right. So a cover up would explain the lack of transparency and the rushed death certificates that were issued, as well as the refusal to reopen the case.
But again, there's still the absence of the remains. And this still remains a major contradiction. So, so I say let's get into theory number three here. And this one really states that the children were taken and, well, they were raised somewhere else. And this theory hinges on the eyewitness accounts, people who claim to have seen the children in the days and weeks after the fire. A woman said she saw them in a car the morning after. A hotel clerk claimed they stayed overnight with unfamiliar adults. And the waitress, well, she remembered serving them breakfast.
Could the children have been abducted and raised under new identities? Perhaps by someone who knew the family or someone who believed they were rescuing them from danger. But the photo mailed in 1967 allegedly of Louis Sodder as an adult adds fuel to this theory. And the resemblance was uncanny, but the cryptic message on the back and the investigator who vanished while pursuing the lead only deepened the mystery.
Wow, that this is one of the biggest unsolved things ever. I mean, think about that. Like you got so many different speculations here, but I say let's really dig into the plausibility and the contradictions. What do you say?
Yes, absolutely. Each theory has its strengths and its flaws.
I say
So
let's start. My bad. I know we kind of went off. We're going way off script here, but I say let's start with the kidnapping because this explains the threats and the sightings, but really lacks motive, clarity, and leaves really no trail.
cover up accounts for the strange behavior of authorities, but doesn't explain the total absence of remains.
Abduction and relocation, well, it fits the sightings and the photo, but really raises questions about how five children could vanish without a trace and remain silent for decades. Think about that. Like, there's ways that they could get in touch throughout the decades, even if they were being raised in some other way, maybe. I don't know.
Right, and those kids, most of them were old enough to remember their original family.
Yeah. And why not reach out later on in life?
Right. But ultimately the case does remain unsolved, and no theory has ever been proven. And no remains have ever been found.
And no one has ever came forward with definitive answers. So the Sodders mystery lives in the space between fact and speculation.
It's a story of grief, hope, and the human need to understand the unexplainable.
And as we'll see, its legacy endures, not just in the family's memory, but in the questions that still echo through time.
For George and Ginny, though, the fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a lifelong quest for truth. And they poured their energy, their resources, their grief into uncovering what happened to Maurice, Martha, Lewis, Jenny Jr., and Betty.
Every lead was followed, every rumor was investigated, every silence was challenged. They never rebuilt the house. Instead, they turned the site into a memorial garden, a quiet, sacred space where the children's absence was felt most deeply.
That is super sad.
Yeah, it really is.
Dang. And just down the road, the billboard stood tall for nearly 4 decades, a haunting reminder to every passerby that 5 children had vanished, and someone, somewhere, might know why.
Yeah, even after George passed in 1969 and Jenny in 1989, the search, well, it didn't end. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, she carried the torch. She never believed her siblings had died in that blaze, and she wasn't alone.
And no, because Sylvia's children and grandchildren have continued to share the story, keeping the mystery alive through interviews, articles, and online communities.
Really, the big question here, why does this case still captivate us nearly 80 years later?
Maybe it's the eerie silence of the official narrative, but maybe it's the trail of strange clues in the photo mail decades later, or the idea that 5 children could simply vanish without a trace.
But more than anything, I think really it's the humanity at the heart of it, right? The fierce love of a family who refused to forget because they really didn't have e- definitive evidence that they burn up in the fire. So I mean, it's a sad story all the way around.
It is. And to happen on Christmas.
Well, I guess Christmas Eve, Christmas Day.
Right. And a fire that should have left behind answers instead ignited decades of questions. 5 children vanished without a trace. No remains, no closure, just silence and suspicion.
Yeah, George and Jennie Sodder refused to accept the official story. Their grief became a mission, their heartbreak became a billboard, and their love for their children became a legacy that stretched far beyond Fayetteville, West Virginia.
They faced ridicule, dead ends, and decades of uncertainty, but they never stopped searching. Their resilience, rooted in hope and defiance, turned a family tragedy into a national enigma.
So now we turn the question to you, the listener.
What really happened that night?
What was it, a tragic accident cloaked in confusion, or something darker? An abduction, a conspiracy, a cover up?
The truth may be buried in time, but the story lives on in the whispers of witnesses, the faded photograph mailed decades later, and the quiet determination of a family that refused to forget.
This is really a sad story of a Christmas that went dark. But not only that, the not knowing has to be the worst part of this one all the way around.
I agree. The not knowing and not finding anything
Yeah, I
left.
mean, there's no closure for this family.
Even to this day, 80 years later.
Overall, what did you think of this one?
I really was hoping for a happier ending.
When I read this story, when I was researching this story, like I was hoping I would find some definitive answer, something that would say, okay, well, this theory makes more sense than this one. But as we saw, all the theories kind of made sense, but they had holes poked in them too at the same time. So it was like, what really happened to this family? And I wouldn't put it past Mussolini's Italy, um, to actually go after George for being outspoken during this time either.
It's, ugh. And but to have the phone line cut outside the house and the everything not work and stuff not being where it was supposed to be was just awful coincidence.
That's pretty much all I've got. I mean, this one was kind of sad to put out the week before Christmas, but hopefully we can lift you up next week.
Absolutely, we will definitely be more lighthearted next week. If you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to help us keep the show going, you can do so at Patreon. You can find that link in the show notes.
As always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
New or old, thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go.
Over there, you can share with us your show ideas.
Or ask us a question.
And follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Send us a text using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
It really does help others find us. You can also email us at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
And you can find the link to that email address in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious.